Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz bassist and composer Steve Husted. We got into his new 2023 CD called Standards and Then Some. It is his third release as a band leader and is a return to his acoustic, straight-ahead jazz roots. After years of electric and jazz fusion playing and composing, he is once again playing his upright bass and showing his breadth of understanding of the history of jazz while catapulting the music forward with his own compositions. He began his musical journey at the age of 6. From there, he always has been involved in everything musical, from school band to private instruction to playing local parties for friends. He's got a great story. Enjoy this interview. Steve, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. So before we get into Standards and Then Some, the whole COVID thing really ravaged the jazz community for the last 3 years. How did you survive it, and how has it changed you now that we're kind of in this post-pandemic era?
Well, I basically survived two ways. Luckily, first and foremost, I'd been teaching a bit via Zoom, and obviously we switched over to Zoom and did all that kind of stuff. So that kind of helped out. That and my wife is a PhD student at University of Texas here. So being that she's under contract, that kind of saved our financial thing. But other than that, if it weren't for that, man, yeah, God knows what would have happened. I know a lot of people weren't as lucky. And as far as moving forward, I actually, within the first couple of weeks, man, like 4 or 5 people I knew died from it. So it's kind of been a long time for me coming back, mentally trying to get over that. A lot of people I know were deeply affected by it, but it is what it is, man. You gotta keep moving, right? At some point.
Yeah.
But thankfully it looks like, the science and everything is catching up and things are getting better. So there you go. That's all we can hope for.
So how good does it feel to have an album out now? Live shows are picking up. What does this mean for you?
Well, it's this whole thing, is kind of a return, like a full circle thing for me. In my 20s, I discovered the upright bass more than electric bass, and I went through this big transformation and really hardcore straight ahead jazz, and then I kind of wandered away from that into like more of an electric fusion thing for a lot of years, and here I am now coming back full circle after all this, the last few years of all these crazy hardship things, and kind of coming back to where for me my professional musician journey started. So it feels really good. That, and to be able to do it with a really old friend like Dana Stevens, who I've known for a really, really long time. And lucky enough to have these great musicians down here that I met in Austin, in Damien and Israel. It feels fantastic, man. I'm just really glad to have made it through everything and to be in this position, to be honest.
One of my favorite people on this planet is actually the engineer for my show. And he has a show called The Neon Beat. It's the American Songbook, and he always tells me that the backbone of his show is he's always coming back home. And it reminds me of what you're talking about, coming back full circle to where it all began. I think there's something that's profound in a metaphoric way for us as creators, is that we all find a way back to the root.
I agree 100%. And that's a much more eloquent way of putting what I just said.
Well, I just wanted I wanted to throw that in because he always, every time I talk to him about what a big influence he's been on me, and he was one of the reasons why I began this jazz show, he always just says, I'm just coming back home to that music that I loved when I was a kid, giving it to the people that want it because it's not on the airwaves. So there's a lot that goes into that. So with that said, talk to me a little bit about how you put this album together and what this album specifically means.
Okay, well, the whole thing started out, I guess, the beginning of last summer. I kind of had this idea, like I said, coming back after a lot of years and focusing more in on playing upright bass and acoustic music as opposed to more of the electric and fusion stuff. And being that I lived in New York for a long time, I kind of was thinking like how to go about this. And I reached out to Dana, who, like I said, I've known for gosh, 25 years. And so I reached out to him, and he sort of expressed some interest. And initially, I was going to go up to New York and record up there, and use some people up there that we knew, and this and that. And for whatever reason, things happened, and I wasn't able to go. And so I kind of put it on the shelf. And then the beginning of this year, the bug hit me again, so to speak, to get this done. So I reached out to Dana again, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about doing this record again. What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I think I'm still interested in doing it, and I think I'm going to be in Austin in June." And I said, "Well, that certainly changes everything." So being that he was in town on tour with his group, I already kind of had been working a little bit with Damien and Israel on trying to get something going to do a recording here. I mentioned it to them. Everybody seemed into it. Everything just sort of lined up. There we go. And it all started with the idea for me of wanting to have a straight ahead jazz album, as opposed to the first two that I put out that were definitely more like sort of in between just electric jazz and fusion. I don't want to, like, fusion sort of has a connotation of a specific style. They weren't really quite that, but this was sort of a representation of, like, I just want to put out a jazz record. The idea for Standards and Then Some is literally exactly what it said. I'll do some standards and a few of my tunes, and and it just kind of gelled from there, man.
Yeah.
We were able to happen. Dana got into town on a Tuesday. We had one rehearsal on a Wednesday. Thursday we recorded, and 2 weeks later the album was mixed and mastered. It was like a kind of a whirlwind thing, but sometimes that's the best way to do it.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I hope that they get a sense of my love for the music, and the love of what I do, and my love of it's sort of my expression of love, really, that for lack of a better way of putting it. I with everything that's been going on, I want people to feel good. I don't want them to worry. I don't want to evoke some deep social consciousness with this record. Not that that's not important. It is. But I wanted to more offer an escape, a way for people to just kind of listen to music and go, ah. Because I know that's what I do when I listen to, like, really good jazz. I've been listening. I just saw Ron Carter with his Golden Striker trio here in Austin, and that's exactly how I felt the whole night. It was just like this huge relief of everything. All the burdens that you feel day to day just were gone for those few hours. And that's really my biggest hope that people would get out of this, is just to kind of kick back and feel good for the whatever 45 minutes. I think that's how long about the record is. So,
So how did this journey into the jazz begin for you? Where were you born and raised, and how did it start?
Well, I was born at Yale New Haven Hospital in New Haven, Connecticut. And I came about it kind of differently, I think, maybe, I don't know. Being that I was born in 1970, maybe a lot of people my age came about it this way, but I came about it through fusion. The first jazz that I really heard was Heavy Weather by Weather Report when I was like, I guess I was sort of, I guess it was seventh grade or something like that. Before that, I was really into, like, all the typical 70s and 80s rock stuff, Led Zeppelin, all that, the Beatles were huge, Wings, all that stuff. I was into all that. And then I heard Jocko and Weather Report, and it kind of sideways in from there. But even from then, even all through high school, I still wasn't really playing upright bass, and I wasn't really thinking about playing, like, straight ahead jazz. That kind of happened in my 20s or in my late teens, I guess, when I decided I wanted to go to college. And at this point, I failed to mention, in 1986, I moved from Connecticut to San Francisco with my father. And that's really where I really started getting into jazz, was in San Francisco, because there was a much wider scene for it than in my small little town in Connecticut. From there, I got into the acoustic thing when I realized that, like, there was much more opportunity to go to college playing acoustic bass and playing jazz that way than the kind of stuff I was used to listening to, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Once I got a hold of an upright bass, it was just like, oh, hey, you know.
Yeah. So what was the first live show you saw that blew you away?
I guess the very first like jazz, and again, this was more of a fusion thing, was I saw the Yellow Jackets at the Stern Grove Jazz Festival in San Francisco. This little tiny, it's sort of like a little park off of 19th Avenue called Stern Grove, and they have this festival there. I think it's still going on. It's been going on forever. But I remember in the 80s, it was free. That was great for a high school kid. And I went in and I saw Jimmy Haslip and Bob Mincer and those guys. And I was like, wow. I'd never heard or seen anyone play like that live. I'd heard some records, but I was like, wow, I thought, like a lot of people did back in the 80s, oh, that's sequenced, or, we were starting to get into the studio tricks back then. But that was really the first band I really, really saw that totally blew me away. And then from there, I guess I started seeking out more jazz. And then the next one I would have to say would be Wynton Marsalis. And it was a sort of a clinic / performance that he did at Stanford University in the late 80s, early 90s. I was some late teens, early 20s for me. I'm dating myself. but yeah, and then that from there, it was just it was over. Then it was all about John Coltrane and
Yeah.
Mingus and all that stuff,
So as somebody that's been at this for quite a while, what's been your favorite part of being a professional musician?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but that idea of like kind of feeling like I'm part of the solution and not a problem, like making people feel good, not feeling like no matter what we all think about life in general, we can all come together at a gig and just enjoy some music, and not worry about all the crazy stuff. I mean, you have to worry about it, obviously, but at least for a little while, we can kind of put that on the shelf and just enjoy ourselves and be just be,
Yeah.
That's my favorite part. That and I don't have to get up really early in the morning.
Yeah, that always helps for sure. So why do you love jazz?
That's an interesting question, and I'm glad you asked it, because like so many people just sort of think they have preconceived notions. I really love jazz because I feel like personally it's freeing as a musician. And it's not freeing just because a lot of people think, oh, you just wiggle your fingers and this and that. It's freeing in the amount of discipline and knowledge and work that it takes to get there. I find that very liberating. And then to be able to just have that at my fingertips to express in a nonverbal way whatever I'm feeling at the moment. That's like I get kind of goosebumps when I think about just being able to do it, let alone actually doing it, So,
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of all of the potential shows that you could see in the history of jazz, if you could get into a time machine, where are you going to go? Who would you love to see live?
If I could see anything, wow, that's tough, man. It's tough to narrow it down to just one. The first thing that comes to my mind, I would try to go back and see the gigs that they recorded for that Monk and Coltrane live at the 5 Spot and actually be in the room for that. Because the recording itself is not very good, but the playing is so monstrous. That would be, I would love to see that. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Then I would actually really also like to go back and be able to see the first, the two, both of Miles's great quintets in their prime. The kind of blue one and the 60s, with Ron and Wayne and everybody. I'd like to see them when they were all like really young and just on fire, I think that would be my two, well, I guess three really top ones right off the bat.
I'll join you on that trip for sure. So let me ask you this. Everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but ultimately you're the one in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Honestly, man, I think I'm just a big band geek. I'm just a nerd, you know. I have like a lot of dad jokes. I used to think I was cool, and then I realized that realizing you're not cool is what's cool.
Right.
And you know, and I just that's what I think of myself. I'm just sort of like this awkward kind of person who really likes playing music and hanging out and laughing, and that's my perception of me. I think other people. Gosh, I don't even know. I don't even want to pretend to know what they think of me.
Well, Steve, this has been wonderful, man. Before we get out of the door here, let everybody know where the best place to pick up standards and then some, find out about live shows, anything about your world.
Okay, well, the album, it's going to be a digital only release, just because I don't really know anyone who has a CD player anymore, even. So we decided to go with that. It's going to be available on Amazon and iTunes for download, as far as I know, maybe a few others. I'd have to check with the distribution. And then as far as that for streaming, it's going to be on all the major, all the platforms that you could possibly think of, Spotify, Tidal. That's where it's going to be. You can always check my website, stephenhusted.com, for any updates on my live show. My calendar is up there. You can always follow me on Facebook or Instagram or the new one there, Threads. You know, I try to keep up with the social media and stuff as best I can. And yeah, you know, and I want to thank you for, you know, I've been checking you guys out for a while, and thank you for doing what you do and helping to keep this music alive and stuff. We need all the help we can get.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Steve for his time, energy, and cool. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.